Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. This is the meeting of the Egg Harbor City Municipal Land Use Board for June 17th, 2025. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting was provided by posting on the City Hall bulletin board and by notification to our newspapers of record. And I ask the Secretary to make this announcement part of that record, please. And Donna, a roll call if you would, please.
Mayor Jim Petty? Here. Mr. Garth?
Here.
Mrs. Torres? Here. Mr. Frick?
Here.
Mr. Peterson?
Here.
Mr. McKenna?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Mrs. Hesse?
Here.
Okay, thank you, Donna. We have minutes for May 20 meeting.
Make a motion?
Second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried, thank you. Approval of Resolution 2025-5, Dicker 3 LLC, 257, 259 Philadelphia Avenue. Is there a motion on the resolution?
Motion?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Should I do
Anyone opposed?
And I have a comment to
I
make
can't
about,
vote on that one, because I was down the audience.
I have a comment to make about that resolution. A question came from outside of the board, but sometimes when questions that Donna and I shake our heads at, we're thinking, well, maybe it's a teaching moment. So just for everybody's edification, I don't know if it's a question for you guys, but somebody asked, well, why is there a resolution when the application was denied? So, just so everybody knows, every time we take action, we do a resolution. Just throwing it out there. The question, we actually, it took us back for a minute, so that's that.
Regardless of the outcome, there still has to be
Of course.
put on the record.
But if somebody asks the question, maybe somebody else has that question, so we throw it out.
Thank you.
Okay, a new business application 2025-04, Lago Construction. You have representation?
Before the applicant starts, I want to provide a brief overview, I think, and I'm so sorry that my back's to you guys. A brief overview.
You sit there every meeting. So you
It's terrible. No matter where I sit, I'm going to have my back to somebody. I think it's really important to frame this application because it's really unique. And Charles Wolfson and I have had a number of conversations. The applicant has put together a beautiful application, and Ryan and I have had two conversations a month apart about this. And when this issue first came up, I looked through all my books and scratching my head, and I'm not telling you how to vote. But this is what you need to know. This is a property that fronts, as you know, on San Francisco Avenue. When the construction permit was first submitted, it showed, despite the ordinance that prohibits it, it showed the driveway in the front. The ordinance, and there's two parts to all of our land use ordinances as far as zoning requirements. And they're broken down most practically for this conversation into setbacks and things like that, and we know that if the applicant's not going to do exactly what the bulk variances say, it's a variance. The other part of the ordinance that governs this location are considered waivers. Could somebody really come in and argue hard that this is a variance application? Absolutely. And when Mr. Wilson and I had this conversation, we wanted to make sure all of the I's were dotted and T's were crossed, so that's the application. But Ryan and I, having discussed this in detail and having reviewed the ordinances that govern this, it's my opinion that this is really a waiver request, and you really can't deny it. I'm not telling you how to vote. I'm only the lawyer, I'm not a member, but the ordinance that governs this parcel of land says that driveways have to come off the terrace. while your tax map shows 13th Terrace, it doesn't exist. It's not there. There's no way for the driveway to go where the ordinance says it needs to go. So Ryan's gonna fill you in with numbers and stuff, and of course, we'll have conversation about this, but that's the overview. The ordinance says one thing, well, the ordinance says two things. The applicant can't comply,
I understand.
so we're, at the end of the meeting, going to suggest that we as a board make a referral to council to address how do property owners comply with the zoning ordinances that govern properties like this. So, thank you. That's my legal input before we dive into this. And you can ask them as the applicant and the professionals as many questions as you want, of course. But I've told them that probably less is more. They don't need to convince us of the facts that I just laid out for you. Okay?
Yes, hello, my name is Charles Wilson. I'm an attorney in Huntington, New Jersey. I represent Lago Construction. Mr. Francesco Scaglia is here as a representative of Lago Construction. And his family is also the owner of the property, which is Lago Maritimo. Actually, his parents own the land. He owns he's the contractor that built this house. The house is essentially complete. The building itself is up, plugged in. There's a couple minor housekeeping things he has to take care of. And he's going to, there is the house is under contract. So as soon as we can get final approvals from the town, there'll be a closing and it'll be transferred to a couple new residents of Egg Harbor City. Basically, I agree with Ms. Koloff. What we're asking here is official, and no matter how you call it. But we want permission to let us construct a driveway here, with no garage involved in this construction, so that people can park in front of their house on a concrete driveway. Okay. It's my understanding you'll hear from the expert. But that's pretty much the only place you can put that on the property. And there's no way to go out the back. No practical way. It's practical difficulty, almost impossible to go out the back without, there's no paving back there, shrubs, trees, etc. So we're gonna, I guess we're gonna start
It's their terrace, right
here.
there. It goes right to the back of there.
Exactly,
It's-
they're going to get the drawings and the design. So we'll start with him. And you can work on Mr. Scaglia, if he's available.
You swear everything you offer tonight will be the truth?
Absolutely.
And can you state your name?
Andrew Schaefer, firm Schaefer Master Consulting Engineers. Okay, so I believe that 13th Terrace from our surveyor does exist, but it's a dirt, gravel, twisty road. Some people along the street have access to it. However, we would prefer to go to San Francisco Avenue. And if you look at this, there are 6 people in the block already on both sides of the street that already have curb cuts and driveways onto San Francisco Avenue. And we are asking for the waiver, variance, whatever it may be determined that is required to be able to do the same thing so that we front and access an improved street rather than an unimproved street.
Do you want to mark that for the
I'm
board?
happy to. Thank you.
I guess it should be, that should be P2, the other one should be P1. P1 maybe? Okay, fine.
A1.
The aerial is A1, and the site plan, which is the same as what's already been submitted, will be A2.
And are either of those dated?
Well, this is actually a portion of the site plan that's already been submitted.
Okay.
And no, I don't have a date on it. And the aerial is taken from Google Maps
So, do we have to read the criteria and all that?
Ryan and I agree it's a waiver, so the board just has to find that it's better rather than not. You don't have to go through the positive and negative criteria.
Correct. Okay. Ryan, do you want to comment before we have discussion from the board?
I'll give a little context on why it's a waiver, not a variance. The city's land use ordinance has a section, and ours is set up as a table, where it talks about what's permitted and where, what the setbacks are and all of that. And then there's a site plan section, talks about site plan subdivision requirements. All relief from those are typically considered variances. This requirement is found in the design standards section. So anything that's a design standard, we typically consider to be a waiver from a design standard. Doesn't rise to the level of variance. So that's why we're going this route. Other than that, I mean, I think they covered it fairly well, as Mr. Schaefer alluded to. The terrace exists technically. I mean, there's Google Street View there, but it's a winding dirt road, a paved road.
And I should have used the word unimproved.
Sure.
Right, and on top of that, I'll have to add, I mentioned to say it, it's probably not plowed in the wintertime if it snows, where San Francisco is.
That's a safe bet, yes.
Here to live there.
So yeah, and then as Carl noted in my recommendation section, I actually sort of discuss like, if the board feels that potentially this was an oversight in the drafting of the ordinance, we could recommend back to city council to update the ordinance to say that this section only applies when there's a paved terrace or access to a paved terrace at the rear of the subject property. So other than that, that's all I've got.
Discussion, board members? Questions of the applicant? Anyone?
I do.
I had a question. I was reading over the attachment to the application about the property. In the application, it says that the 13th Terrace is completely unimproved. It's only a paper street. It is covered with trees and underbrush. Neither of the two adjoining residents use the terrace. There's no pavement, not even gravel, at the intersection of 13th and East Ward. There's no curbing for the entrance to the unimproved terrace. Now, I went there today, and actually, it's not a paper street. It's actually an improved street. I think we have our public utilities, water and sewer, coming from the terrace. It is gravel. There is curbing at East Ward and 13th Street. And if I got a picture that your neighbors parking their trucks and their boat off the terrace.
That's accurate.
So it's just a little misleading if you look at the application without physically going to look there.
Let's say it this way, it's not improved with paving.
It's not paved, no, but everything else in there wasn't correct. That's what I'm saying, because, yeah.
I'll take responsibility. Okay? Because I didn't look at it until last week after I filed. There is, if you're on the side street, there's little curbing that goes around.
I'm sort of cut halfway in because of the wetlands.
But then somebody I saw there dumped a load of millings, okay? Which probably doesn't comply with your engineering standards, okay? So that they probably could get access, but that's not according to the law. So part of that's my oversight. I looked at the Google myself, and I didn't see any curb cuts there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I have a thought, I just went there today,
Yeah.
and the neighbors are using it because they're parking their boat and trucks in the terrace. And it kind of reminds me of Jack Peterson's terrace, same thing. It's cut halfway in, which is gravel, right? Behind your house.
It was a mud street until I put stone down,
Oh, so you put some in there,
because I don't have a driveway in the front either.
yeah. No, right, yeah. I saw that, so I just wanted to make sure that that
Is mine
was
First
correct.
Terrace? It's also like New Orleans Avenue, the one half of New Orleans Avenue, what is it, the 5th, 5th, 6th, 7th Street, they're not paved at all either, and that's their front, yeah, so, to me, I was out there as well, and I saw the same thing, it's a beautiful terrace, I mean, it may not be paved, but it's really, there's no bumps, it's actually better than some of the terraces that we have, I have to say, and there's plenty of parking in the front, you don't have to worry about any of that. My concern is the school children when you back out over there, that's what I'm concerned with.
Let me just address the thing about, you're not, according to the ordinance, permitted to have parking on the streets with the curb cut.
Pardon me?
You're not permitted to park at.
On-street parking.
There's no on-street parking there?
No
Here,
on-street
school.
parking. Your municipal ordinance says no on-street parking there. Because that would have been, I was gonna tell the client, you're on-street parking, let the people park on the street, but you can't. It's in the ordinance.
There's signs stating there's no parking there?
San Francisco
The
Avenue?
ordinance. Ordinance.
Do they have a driveway though?
No,
No driveway?
oh, that's what he's trying to put in.
That's what.
In the front,
Yeah.
there's no driveway in the
No
front.
driveway now, because it's not legal for us.
Can one be created or no?
Yes, that's what we're proposing, is a driveway to San Francisco in front of the house.
Half the houses on the street have driveways
Yeah.
on San Francisco.
Yeah.
I think one more is not gonna hurt anything.
I agree.
Right, I mean, I think it's just fitting, I mean, you try to make your decision based on what that section of the neighborhood has. I mean, it's fitting for that block. If it was 3 blocks over, I think most people would have a hardship with it, but that block is very fitting. I am confused on the waiver versus variance. There is a cutaway there, and there is access, and utilities come there, and it is a,
So it's only because of the section of the ordinance that it falls in. If this was in, earlier in the ordinance, where it's under site plan subdivision standards, or in, listed on the table where we have like side yard setback and all of that stuff, that would be a variance. Because it's in the design standards section, it's a waiver, but it's only because it's not in that like primary section. It comes later in the ordinance, it's not a primary standard essentially. That's the best way I can put it. It's really just comes down to wording. Effectively, you need relief from it one way or the other way. It's a variance or a waiver.
so just
You
to
grant relief
clarify,
consent.
going forward.
Yes.
Another applicant,
Mhm.
300 block, wants to do the same thing.
Yep.
Is that then a variance, or is that a waiver?
It would be a request for a waiver, but the warrants would not, if they have a paved terrace behind them, it wouldn't be warranted, essentially. Because this requirement requires you to have access off the rear of your property, but if you don't have a paved road to the rear of your property, you know, how do you apply this standard for someone to have to install their driveway where there is no paved access? That's really.
I'm just trying to understand the difference.
Yeah,
And
it's-
I think it's fine because the rest of the block has the same setup.
right.
And my question is, how many other properties in the city have the same situation? Because I'm on First Terrace, and my terrace is not paved. I have a driveway though on Norfolk Avenue, which I take in, I'm on Beethoven. But
So
again,
this would come up on any unimproved lots that have terraces that are dirt behind them. There's not a ton of them, but there's certainly a few. So if anyone were to build a house on a paved street that has a dirt terrace behind it, they're kind of stuck in this loophole where they can't put a driveway out the front, but they don't really want to put a driveway on the dirt road. And as Mr. Schaefer pointed out, like, that's not going to get paved in the winter, or I'm sorry, that's not going to get plowed in the winter and all that. So anyone in this situation who would build a house that has a street out front and a dirt terrace behind is going to want a front access driveway, and presumably would be entitled to that.
okay, well, that's a good question on my part, because I have 2 lots on Norfolk Avenue, and again, I don't have a paved terrace.
behind.
And if I built a house there, which I have 2 lots, I can build 2 houses.
Sure.
I would have to go through this too, right?
Correct, you'd have to apply and seek a waiver.
Not good.
Well, that's why at the end of my letter, I sort of suggested, like, you know, rather than put people into the situation, maybe we condition that requirement on having access to a paved terrace at the rear of the property.
So if you have an improved terrace and you want a driveway in the front, then you would have to seek variance?
Right.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions, discussion? Do we have a motion framed that, what would we?
Public comment.
I'm sorry. Anyone from the public wish to speak? Thank you. No one? Okay. Then we'll need a motion.
The motion would look like this, that you are approving, you don't have to vote yes, but we like motions in the positive, so it's very clear that the application that was submitted at our advice for a variance, but now is determined to be a waiver from the requirement to have access in and out of a lot that fronts on San Francisco, but has rear frontage on the rear line, I should say, on a terrace is granted because of all the reasons placed on the record tonight, specifically that it's, that the terrace is, the 13th terrace is not paved. Getting back to this particular lot is impractical, and the driveway, where it's shown on the map, is the least intrusive and more appropriate design for this particular site.
Did someone offer
I
that?
make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and seconded, roll call, Donna, please.
When we do this, can we, like last time, just say a little blurb about why, yes or no, so I can put that in the resolution? Thank you.
And I heard you guys did a really good job about that last month. Rachel said they were really,
Thanks to your daughter.
she said they did really, really well.
Mayor Jim Petty?
Yes, because it conforms to the other houses and driveways in the neighborhood.
Okay. Mrs. Hesse?
Yes, only because they can't park on the street.
Mr. Garth?
Yes, for the same reason.
Okay, Mrs. Torres?
Yes?
And Ms.
Yes, I'm in favor. I'm in favor.
Okay, Mr. Frick?
Yes, because it's not paved in the terrace.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes, for reasons stated by other members.
Mr. McKenna?
Yes, same as everybody else because the terrace is unimproved.
And Mr. Walker?
Yes, because the other houses all have driveways. I don't see how you can tell this applicant that he can't have them.
Okay.
Unanimous?
Could I ask one question of them? Is it too late? I just wanted to know, why didn't you have the driveway on the left-hand side? Why are you having it on the right? Isn't it wider on the left-hand side than the right-hand
Because I have a
side?
driveway. Nobody
Just
else
out of
here has a
curiosity.
driveway. Just me.
Isn't it
Probably
wider?
not a good reason, except they may have asked for that, in case we have a garage too.
And I think.
Wouldn't it be better on the other side?
I think it just happened that you have the water retention on one side.
Oh,
So that's
water
right.
retention.
So this is a Pinelands lot, which means we had to do a water garden,
Okay,
rain
thank,
garden.
It looks like you already have your sidewalk in there, so if you're going to put the driveway, you're going to have to use a portion of that for the driveway, right?
Yeah.
There's not much room left, right?
So there'd be a curb cut made.
Yeah.
And an apron.
Yeah. So the
What is the
sidewalk
footage?
that's there already. is
Would be
part
part of the,
driveway.
yes, that's what I meant, yeah.
so it will be far enough away from the neighbors on the other side, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, other new business, discussion regarding redevelopment area, resolution 119, 2025.
Sure. So I'll take it on direct. So the city has been receiving considerable interest on the neighborhood of Cedar Creek subdivision project. But there are a couple of issues at the moment. One is that the current redevelopment plan technically expired 6 years ago. It had a 10-year lifespan. So that, the plan needs to be amended for numerous reasons, but that is one among them. I'll go through some of the others. There's a reference to the Gateway redevelopment area that we're planning to remove. We need to update the list of properties. The city has acquired some properties since that redevelopment project started. There's no references to a requirement for Pinelands approval. We want to make that clear. The city intends to remove, or was suggesting that we remove the requirement for the street pattern that is referenced in the current plan, which is the extension of the avenues and terraces. And there's a couple other things that are just sort of minor to wrap up. The other portion of it is that the city is requesting that the planning board direct, I guess, me to conduct a study to determine whether the area is in need of redevelopment, not just in need of rehabilitation, which is the current finding that was arrived at by Mr. Nickel, Tim Nickel, the former city planner in 2009, I think it was. So there are some, I guess, advantages or some tools that are available to the city when an area is designated to need redevelopment instead of just an area in need rehabilitation. But you have to conduct a study to see if it meets the criteria and then bring that back. And then the board would have to accept those findings and recommend it back to city council. So that's, the city's trying to initiate that process. So it needs to kick it to you guys because the redevelopment plan document and any study is an exercise of the board and not of city council.
So we would need a motion to authorize you to conduct a study for the redevelopment plan?
That would be the cleanest way, yeah.
Okay. Discussion?
Is there a redevelopment plan already?
Yeah.
So there's.
I know the old one, but the one
Yes.
you're talking about now, the newer one, is there ideas out there? Has it been discussed already?
So we're actually just going to amend the prior plan and then extend it out to a 30-year, well, at least that's the consideration, is to extend it to a 25 or 30-year term. But yeah, I mean, the changes are relatively minor. We can't address things like density because you'd have to go back to Pinelands and they're going to throw a fit. So we've kind of maximized the density in what the current plan is. So it you know, as far as we're, consideration at this point would be still single family at the density that it's shown currently. You know, at minimum at that density, whether townhomes or anything like that were even considered, you'd have to still maintain the density. So yeah, it's not like a major overhaul. We just kind of have to update it, and then, like I said, the study determined what the way that it's worded is very complicated. It sort of dances back and forth, and probably uses the terms rehabilitation and redevelopment interchangeably in some places. So we just need to make it clear that this is an area declared in need of redevelopment, and this is a redevelopment area that applies to that redevelopment, or designated area in need of redevelopment. Right now, it is an area designated in need of rehabilitation with a redevelopment plan that applies to it. So you don't have the same ability to work with developers and do some things that you would have if you had that designation as an area in need of redevelopment.
The street configuration stays the same?
So the way that the project is currently approved, there's 50 or so more lots that are currently approved. Building them as they exist now on paper is not economically feasible. We've had numerous discussions with several developers, and all of them agree with that conclusion. It's not, you'd have to spend more than you would get back, and that's not, what building them is about for developers. So the city is sort of opening up. We have a concept plan that we got from a developer, an engineer working with D.R. Horton a number of years ago that sort of shows a possible way to do it. There's a couple different ways that you could reconfigure, but the idea is essentially, respecting the pattern that's there to fill out some of the infill areas, and then, modifying it as needed to eliminate the terrace, potentially narrow the streets a little bit, because they're all 36-foot wide streets. So those are the kinds of things that we are trying to open up as possibilities, and then have developers sort of present to the city, what their concept is.
So are you saying that the contractors can't make money with single-family homes? The way it's laid out now?
Correct. With the stormwater management facilities as they're currently laid out and the street grid pattern that's currently laid out, there's just too much pavement area and too much length of large diameter stormwater management piping and things like that they couldn't recoup. At market price to sell the house, they could not recoup the cost to build it as shown on paper.
So they're looking to remove the terraces, pretty much, right?
Remove the terraces and reconfigure some of like the way the stormwater management basins are laid out. We did it when the city proceeded with the design 15 years ago. The rules are different than they are now. So when somebody goes to apply to the Pinelands to modify this design, they're going to have to meet far different stormwater management rules. They're going to need a basin for every 2.5 acres of contributing area. We had like 30 acres going in one large basin off in the corner. You can't do that anymore. So it's those kinds of things in the plan that we just need to understand that the new layout for that area will be different than what's shown currently.
Right.
And the plan language needs to be different to reflect that.
So I'm sure with most of those properties, the driveways and the garages will have to front off the front and fill in the terrace. So that'll have to be changed.
It's funny, as I was reviewing this, I was like, oh, this is appropriate time. So yeah, all of those houses presumably would have a front access driveway.
But I would imagine the houses would be deeper on the properties.
Yeah, so we'll have to deal with that with a larger front setback, because the city's current setbacks are all designed around a rear detached garage and rear access and all of that. So, yeah, as we modify this, we'll probably increase the front yard setbacks a little bit to push the houses back a little bit and give a little bit more room for driveways in the front.
And then also, would they stay single-family homes, or
Yeah.
is there plans for condominiums or anything like that, or townhouses?
So the intention right now is, the plan currently says single-family homes. I mean, we could switch to townhomes or other things, but what really makes those more profitable is that you can increase density. You can have more dwelling units per acre than you can with a single-family configuration. But the Pinelands has limited the density. So if you can only build to that density, building units closer together just means you have to dedicate more land to those same units. So the advantage isn't really there to build denser, unless somebody came up with some configuration to have fairly large townhomes spread with open space around them. But I can't see any way that the condos would really make sense, because just the number of dwelling units per acre would necessitate a whole bunch of restricted, open space that wouldn't make sense.
So this won't be the first time that we will deal with this. Because
Correct.
once they do the study, it goes to council, and then council kicks it back to the land use board.
Well,
For
the
comments?
study will come back to you guys, and then you guys will be able to
Present it to
vote
council.
to send it back to council, and then council can take it from there.
Okay, I knew there was a cadence to it, but.
Yep,
Sure.
yep. No, you're close.
So did we shoot ourselves in the foot by creating that retention basin years ago?
Which one?
Well, you took the middle of, was it Norfolk Avenue or?
The temporary basin?
Yeah.
So the concept plans that we have looked at with Hammer, and frankly, I have sort of spent some time dabbling with a couple years ago, actually have an interesting concept on what to do with that. The basin, having a street there, a 36-foot wide street, where you can only put houses on one side, is part of what makes it not economically feasible. The homes that face Philadelphia Avenue are actually full depth to that street. So if we flip that so that what would have been the terrace becomes the street, and the homes face that and back up to the basin and then back up to the backs of the other homes, with the exception where you turn on, it's a little awkward because one house is facing forward, one house is facing this way. Other than that, everything else kind of fits. So, while it wasn't intended to be a temporary facility originally, having a basin behind your yard separating you from the high school sports fields doesn't, that's a pretty good fit. And then the rest of it kind of lines up, so.
So you're telling me that the new rules, each individual property has to have its own stormwater management?
For every 2.5 acres, you need to have a separate stormwater management facility in order to meet the state's green infrastructure rules. So in order to have a green infrastructure facility, that facility needs to infiltrate stormwater, and it can't have a contributing area larger than 2.5 acres. So.
That's 2 per block, right?
Well, so by the time you would lay out a city block, it's going to be about 1 per block. But yeah, so essentially every city block in the current pattern would need its own
And it's the
stormwater
state-
management facility. Yeah, that's state and Pinelands rules, so that's just where we're at now. But again, if you get away from the typical street and terrace layout pattern, you can fit the basins in a little better. You can do a street here and a street here with a gap in between and a basin in between them, and all the houses just sort of, directly flow to there. So it's low-cost infrastructure, because all the houses grade down to it. You don't have to collect it, you don't have to pipe it. So there's other ways around it, but you cannot accomplish that with the street and terrace pattern.
So do you think that the Germans that laid out the town in the 1800s knew that there was going to be a Pinelands?
I think their focus was not so much on water quality based on the tax map layout, no.
Okay, so then we need a motion to.
I got a question.
Go ahead, John.
Sure.
So when you do this, do you come up with suggestions for zoning requirements and things of that nature?
So the plan already contains essentially its own custom zoning for this project. All the setbacks are listed, all of that's already there. Our intent is not to really mess with that too much, other than potentially considering a larger front yard setback to accommodate driveways and to allow for front access.
What I'm getting to, and I bring it up enough that I'm tired of beating this horse, but
Sure.
every municipality around us has a recreation ordinance,
Sure.
as you well know.
Mhm.
every one of these developers, Horton, all of them, build it, and every one of them don't blink for 2 seconds because it's not a waiverable thing, they don't care.
Sure.
They pay it.
So the current plan does have a recreation fee incorporated, and we've had a couple discussions, obviously preliminary at this point, about whether to require like a tot lot or a playground be integrated in, or whether to just keep the recreation fee and then for the city to, take a small parcel and build some kind of playground or recreation out there. But so that language is in here, like I said, for the fee already, but whether we massage that and require them to build recreation per number of units or something like that, that's something we can incorporate into the redevelopment.
I know most municipalities have a waiver that you either set aside a certain amount of property for the recreation, or you contribute the money, it's an and/or.
Correct.
It's or rather, you can't, you don't have to do a combination of both.
Yeah, right,
So-
you would either do the contribution or you would.
And then the
physically
city
construct.
would take that money and apply it for recreation as they see fit.
Correct.
And where they see fit.
No, I think you would have to keep it in that neighborhood, right? If they,
I mean, technically, no. If
No?
the city has a recreation fund and the developer pays into it, it doesn't have to be dedicated to that
right, you
specific
would
area.
think that it would.
Yeah, I mean, the city could say, okay, well, it's more appropriate, a couple blocks down here where it would fill this neighborhood and the new development. It's not limited to
I know we
just
didn't
there.
do that with Haber. We didn't build anything.
No, we didn't build
We took
anything,
his
but
money, but.
Right, I think it's a
He had a
recreation.
fund, because that's how we built the dugouts at Key Rec from them.
Right, there was a recreation fee that he paid on each lot as itself. Yep.
And hopefully the fee is fitting with our surrounding municipalities.
I think it was
We'll review
$1,500.
that. I can't remember if it was 1,500 or 2,500, I couldn't.
I think Gallows was 5,000, if I remember.
Well, that's,
Edward
so
Township's
this,
close to $8 grand right now.
this redevelopment plan's from 15, 16 years ago, so yeah, we'll have to review that and make sure that it makes sense.
I remember when they came here last time, they said, well, we can't afford to do that, build a home, so we're doing it in every other town.
Yeah.
We're here for the same reason,
Part of the problem, John, is that it's harder to sell houses in Egg Harbor City, and we hear this from the developers because of our tax rate. So any help we can give them
I
to sell
hear
the
that, but
house.
I see, I watch, you see house go up for sale, they sell pretty quick, and they sell them for good money in town.
Yeah, a lot of them are tax exempt now, too.
We're
I would-
working on that part.
I think that would make it easier for them to sell the houses,
What's that, having a recreation?
having a
area?
recreation,
Yeah,
having
no,
a
obviously that
playground
makes
right
things more
nearby.
attractive.
Well, then they should make that part of their plan.
Well, yeah,
They should put the
right.
recreation.
Exactly.
Correct, if you option it one way or the other, we just need to make sure that the fee is high enough that it would make economic sense for them to build it rather than to pay us.
Well, they all apply for them out, if
The
they can't,
profit
they can't do it.
margin, the return on the investment on a lot
Mm-hmm.
for a home versus what it would take to make it a tennis court, you're better off paying into the fund than building a home.
It's very,
That's why
it is
everybody
very.
does
That's why they do it.
But it turns into a maintenance nightmare. Who's responsible?
Well, so typically the city would assume responsibility for a playground or, yeah.
But it is cheaper for them to do it than it would be for us to do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, for them to do it at their cost, they can do it a lot cheaper.
I mean, that tennis court cost us $200,000.
With all the rec fees.
The handicapped accessible was 90,000, right, Ryan? Was it
Yeah,
60 or 90?
the grant was 60, but that was just the
That was-
equipment and
yeah.
mulch, like, the site was already
So
prepped, it was
think
fenced, it was all
about,
that.
maybe somebody comes in and just wants to buy the 50 lots that are buildable. If you charge them $5,000 or even $10,000 for recreation fee, you're not really talking all that much money to build recreation facilities.
What do we
Yeah.
have now?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the developer doesn't care if it's $20,000 towards the city and $5,000 towards rec, or $25,000 to the city and zero towards rec. It's $25,000. That's all they care about.
I'm sure the city could
So
find
how-
some other city-owned property and say, if you develop this, and you're right, it's cheaper for them to do it, because they
Yeah,
They
they're not
can
paying for
negotiate
prevailing
prices.
wage.
And they
they're
would
not-
open
yeah.
a single-family
City
dwelling.
has playgrounds. Galway doesn't have a playground every 2 miles.
No, I agree. Every township only has them scattered
Right.
4 or 5 miles apart. That's why I'm saying,
But
contractor, you should just pay to the fund.
Yeah.
isn't north a lot further for people? They can't just really walk there for the most part. They have to drive there.
Well, it would make sense if you're gonna put all those homes in to have a playground out there also.
I think they usually do
Like Mike
that.
said, they're separated here, and that would be
Yeah.
if you're gonna have a cluster of homes, you might as as well have
It would be
a
like-
Yeah,
you
can have one
and
up.
if the project was fully built out, I mean, you're talking around 300 houses, so yeah, it's a pretty good size development.
Further discussion? Someone offer the motion to,
Make a motion, Ryan, do what he has to do.
Fair enough.
is there a second? All in favor, please say aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you, folks. Any old business? Council report? Carol, do you
I
have?
have, I have
We
a
have to do
question
this
about.
sticker
I'm sorry.
resolution.
That was the beginning.
I have a question about fair housing. Do you guys do anything, because we're involved with so many municipalities for other.
Is that the COA you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yes.
We decided not to pursue that only because we didn't feel that the risk for a builder lawsuit was high. So we're kind of letting it on the back burner for now, but we may have to rethink that depending on how Egg Harbor City North goes.
We can talk a little more detail.
Okay.
Anything from council?
Well, we do have, I don't know if you guys are CC'd on the emails, but we're making a lot of progress on the property on the Wayward's Pike, which shall remain nameless, but, so, that's a good thing.
Okay. Any public comment? Any more comments from the board?
I have one. If you drive down to White Horse Pike, all the businesses, the grass is about 24 inches high on the White Horse Pike, so maybe we ought
We're addressing it.
to,
Yeah.
yeah.
We're out driving around. It's all being addressed.
They're addressing a lot of things, believe it or not.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned, thank you, folks.
That's why.
It's lovely seeing everyone.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We want to have a meeting.
He's still president.